Hey y'all, so this video is going to go over a grammar concept called phrases. So make sure you're taking notes about this. It is really similar to clauses, but they're different. They're different concepts. On the post-assessment for this unit, you'll be required to use both phrases and clauses. And just thinking back to the pre-assessment and some of the other work that I've seen, there's been a lot of confusion over the difference. So you want to make sure you're being very careful when thinking about the difference. And so to do that, I encourage you to take notes so you can have the difference. All right, so we will dive in. All right, so in case you forgot, we're going to review what a clause is. So a clause is a group of words acting together and always contains a subject and a predicate. Clauses can be either independent or dependent. Independent meaning they can stand on their own. Dependent meaning they have to be attached to an independent clause. Clauses are always linked together by conjunctions. There's two different kinds. We have the coordinating conjunction, which is the fanboys, and then we have the subordinating conjunction, which, there's tons of those. Yeah, so basically that's clauses. If any of what I just said is confusing to you or you don't feel like you have it down 100%, go back and look over those notes again or watch that video one more time because it's crucial you understand that information. Okay, so starting now, this is new information. Phrases, catch this definition, it's really similar to clauses. Phrases are a group of words that act together as a unit. So there's always going to be one specific word and that unit that is the most important one that we name the phrase after. Now notice the difference between phrases and clauses. Phrases are just words that act together as a unit. Clauses are words that act together as a unit, always containing a subject and a predicate. So phrases could have a subject or they could have a predicate, but they're never going to have both of them. So there are specific numbers, or rather there's a specific set of types of phrases. So we have a noun phrase, verb phrase, adjectival, adverbial, participial, prepositional, and absolute. And the next slides we're going to go over what those different kinds of phrases are. Think of phrases as Legos. Phrases attach to each other to build something greater. And sometimes there are phrases within phrases, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But phrases are the building blocks to clauses, and clauses, of course, are the building blocks to sentences. So think of phrases as almost like the smallest unit. All right, so we're going to start going over the different kinds. All right, the first kind of phrase is a noun phrase. And it's named a noun phrase because the most important word in the phrase is the noun. It centers around a noun. So I have two examples there. The noun phrases are in blue and they're underlined as well. So the dog is running. Noun phrase in that would be the dog. Slightly changing it, the furry dog is running. The noun phrase is the furry dog. Now notice furry is not a noun, it's an adjective, but because it's describing dog, it's part of the noun phrase itself. All right, the furry dog, noun phrase. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, next we have the verb phrase, and you guessed it, it centers around the verb. So here again, underlined and in blue is our verb phrase, the dog is running. And then the dog is running quickly. So just like in the previous slide with the noun phrase, quickly is not a verb, but because it is modifying or describing verb, the action, it's part of the verb phrase. And if we were to go in and add a preposition after quickly, the dog is running quickly, into the house. Into the house will be part of the verb phrase as well. So basically, it's anything that's modifying the verb. All right, third type is the adjectival phrase, which centers around an adjective. And you may see this as written as an adjective phrase, but the way our standards refers to it is adjectival. Just know it's the same thing. So again, in blue and underlined, the very ugly dog has mangy fur, or the very smelly ugly dog has mangy fur. So ugly is an adjective that is describing dog. But the word very is intensifying or it's describing ugly, okay? So the very ugly dog is a noun phrase that's made up of smaller phrases. All right, very and ugly come together to form an adjectival phrase, and that adjectival phrase goes to be part of the noun phrase. So adjectival phrase is very ugly, noun phrase the very ugly dog. All right. All right, similar to the adjectival phrase is the adverbial phrase, and you guessed it, it's a phrase that centers around an adverb. So think of the Lego concept again. Adverbial phrases go to be part of a verb of a verb phrase. So it says the dog runs very quickly. Our adverbial phrase is very quickly. It's blue and an underline, and it's part of the noun phrase runs very quickly. So again, that's one of those instances where a smaller block goes with other parts to form something bigger. All right, this next phrase, the participial phrase, is a little bit less self-explanatory. It does center on a participle. So it's, again, blue and an underlined the participial phrase. Of course, a participle is basically the function. It's what a word is doing. So the function here, a verb, is functioning as a participle as action. So here, the participle is ducking. Ducking under the fence. All of those words are going together to be part of a phrase. Under the fence is referring to the action of ducking. So ducking under the fence is the participial phrase. Same thing with this next example, barking his head off. Barking is the action being done. His head off is referring to the barking. So that phrase is part of the participial phrase. All right, our next one is the prepositional phrase, and this one centers around a preposition. So if you're having trouble remembering what preposition is, think of like everything an airplane can do to a cloud or a squirrel can do to a log. So the dog ran through my yard. An airplane can fly through a cloud. I guess a squirrel technically could run through a log. I don't know if it was like super squirrel or something. Anyways, through my yard. Preposition there is through. What is being run through? It's the yard. Okay. And the cool thing about prepositional phrases is you can just continually add them, literally to infinity. So this sentence down below, the dog ran through my yard. Through my yard is a prepositional phrase. On his way is another prepositional phrase. To the cat, prepositional phrase. From my neighbor's house, prepositional phrase. Down the street, another one. And near the main road is another prepositional phrase. And we could literally keep going forever and ever and ever adding prepositional phrases, and it would get annoying and obnoxious, but it would still technically be grammatically correct, which is cool. There's a song that I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard. How does it start? There's a bump on a log and a hole at the bottom of the sea, and like you keep adding stuff. There's a frog on the log, on the bump, on the hole, and adds on continually. Basically, that song, you're just adding more and more prepositional phrases. All right, there you go with that one. All right, our very last type of phrase is the absolute phrase, and this one's kind of confusing. It's identified by a noun and a participle that cannot stand alone, which I know sounds really similar to a clause, but the key thing there is that they cannot stand alone. So let's look at the first sentence example. Head hung, the dog gave up the chase. If I were just to walk up to you and say, head hung, and I walked away, that would not make sense, right? It's basically describing, almost think of it as like zooming in on something in particular. So we have the dog who's given up the chase, and we zoom in on his head hanging. Absolute phrases kind of add drama. They add detail to a description. Look at the next sentence down. Hopes renewed. The dog stood up to chase an unsuspecting squirrel. So again, we have the noun. We have the participle. Cannot stand alone. Technically, hopes renewed. That doesn't make sense as a standalone sentence. So it's clearly referring to something else, which would be the hopes of the dog, so referring back to dog. All right, I know this one is a little bit kind of difficult to understand how it works. Just memorize that you have a noun and you have a participle, and for some reason it sounds odd to the point where it can't stand apart from anything else. That is the absolute phrase. All right, so just like you did with the clauses, there's going to be a painting with parts of speech activity you do. More paintings, you're going to go in and you'll be told a specific type of phrase, and you'll need to describe the artwork or the image on the next slide with a sentence using that phrase, and you'll underline the phrase when you use it. So check Canvas for that and make sure you're paying attention to the due date. But yeah, so as always, I'll end it the way I normally do. If you have questions, send me an email. If not, have fun with the parts of speech. All right, bye-bye.